Why did a drama that had everything going for it, a powerful title, a promising cast, and months of hype, turn into one of the biggest disappointments of 2025? The story of HIM 2025 isn't just about a failed drama. It's about how excitement can blind both creators and audiences, and how something that begins with so much promise can crumble under its own weight. Asterisk. When HIM 2025 was first announced, the industry lit up with curiosity. The name itself carried mystery. Just 3 letters, bold and striking, enough to spark questions. Who is him? What is the story behind this figure? The title alone created endless speculation across forums, fan groups, and drama communities online. Before a single frame had aired, people were already creating theories about what the show could mean. The production house behind HIM 2025 had a track record of successful dramas in the past, and that only added fuel to the fire. It promised something fresh, something that would change the way we see character-driven storytelling in television. It was positioned not just as another drama, but as an event, the kind of show that dominates conversations, that creates hashtags, and that makes people cancel plans just to watch the premiere. Trailers and teasers were cut to perfection. They revealed almost nothing concrete, yet they were dripping with mood and suspense. Slow-motion shots of a man's silhouette. Dialogue snippets that hinted at betrayal, love, and revenge. Background music that swelled with intensity and mystery. Each teaser pulled the audience deeper into the promise of something unforgettable. Social media buzz grew louder. Clips from the teaser were re-edited by fans into fan-made trailers. Memes about "Who is HIM?" filled Twitter and TikTok. Everyone wanted to know what this story would unfold into. Casting was another weapon in the drama's arsenal. The lead actor was a rising star with a reputation for powerful, emotional performances. His involvement alone was enough to guarantee a strong opening. Paired with a director who was known for blending artful cinematography with mainstream appeal, HIM 2025 felt unstoppable. Even industry insiders, critics, reviewers, and rival studios admitted that this drama seemed poised to dominate ratings, but the hype wasn't only about talent. Timing played a role too. The series was announced in late 2024, at a time when audiences were hungry for fresh stories. Several other popular dramas had just concluded, leaving a gap in the weekly drama lineup. Fans were ready to throw themselves into the next big obsession. HIM 2025 positioned itself as that exact obsession, promising deep character studies, shocking twists, and a never-before-seen ending. The marketing machine knew exactly how to play the audience's emotions. They didn't just sell a show, they sold the idea of a cultural phenomenon. The build-up became almost unbearable. Online polls ranked HIM 2025 as the most anticipated drama of the year. Influencers who had been invited to private previews teased their audiences with vague but glowing reactions. Words like masterpiece, revolutionary, and game changer floated around without explanation. The marketing team made sure these phrases went viral, giving the impression that something historic was about to unfold on screen. By the time the release date arrived, the pressure was immense. Audiences weren't simply watching a show. They were expecting to witness a once-in-a-generation drama. They expected a story that would shock them, inspire them, and maybe even break their hearts in ways television rarely does. That level of expectation is a double-edged sword. It builds excitement, but it also sets a bar so high that even a good show can feel disappointing if it doesn't reach the myth it has built around itself. And that's where the cracks in HIM 2025 would begin to show. The hype was like a towering skyscraper built on shaky ground. On the surface, everything looked magnificent. The trailers, the cast, the marketing. But inside, the foundations were not as strong as audiences had been led to believe. What started as a dream project with limitless potential was about to become one of the most fascinating case studies in how hype can destroy even the most promising productions. Asterisk. At the heart of every drama, no matter how expensive the sets or how famous the actors, lies one simple truth: the story is everything. If the story isn't strong, nothing else matters. And this is where HIM 2025 took its sharpest fall. On paper, the concept sounded groundbreaking. The series promised to explore themes of identity, betrayal, and hidden truth through the lens of one mysterious character, the him of the title. Audiences expected a layered narrative filled with shocking reveals and emotional payoffs. But when the show began, the storytelling quickly showed cracks. Instead of building tension with purpose, it leaned on confusion. Instead of giving the audience clarity when needed, it buried them in half-explained scenes and dialogue that often sounded deep but led nowhere. The pacing was one of the biggest problems. Some episodes dragged endlessly, filled with repetitive flashbacks and long monologues that didn't move the plot forward. Other times, critical plot points were rushed through so quickly that viewers barely had time to process them. This imbalance left the story feeling like it was both too slow and too fast, dragging where it should have moved and sprinting where it should have breathed. A recipe for frustration. Another issue was the overuse of cliches, betrayals that were obvious from the first episode, love triangles that felt recycled from older dramas, predictable cliffhangers that teased danger but rarely delivered. What was marketed as a bold and original story often played out like a collection of familiar tropes stitched together without much care. Audiences who tuned in for something fresh quickly realized they were being handed the same old formula, just wrapped in shinier packaging. But what hurt the most was the lack of emotional connection. The story set up moments that should have been powerful, a confession, a betrayal, a revelation of truth. Yet when those scenes came, they fell flat. Why? Because the writing never built the foundation for those emotions to hit hard. Characters would suddenly act out of personality, or major twists would arrive without proper setup. Instead of shock, viewers felt confusion. Instead of tears, they felt nothing. The very heart of the drama, its emotional core, was hollow. Take the central mystery of the show. Who is him? This was supposed to be the driving question that pulled audiences from episode to episode. But instead of carefully unraveling the answer, the writers stretched the mystery thin. They dangled hints that didn't add up, introduced subplots that went nowhere, and relied too heavily on withholding information rather than building intrigue. By the time the reveal came, many viewers had already guessed it, while others no longer cared. What should have been the show's crown jewel felt anticlimactic. And then there was the dialogue. Lines that aimed for poetic often ended up sounding forced. Conversations felt more like speeches than natural exchanges between people. Instead of pulling viewers deeper into the world of the characters, the dialogue pushed them away, constantly reminding them that they were watching actors reading lines instead of living real moments. The result? A story that looked complex from a distance but collapsed under close inspection. The pieces didn't fit. The tension didn't build. The twists didn't land. And most importantly, the story didn't respect its audience's patience or intelligence. Viewers who entered excited quickly grew tired. Online discussions shifted from, "What do you think will happen next?" to, "Does anyone even care anymore?" That's a deadly sign for any drama. Weak storytelling is like a slow poison. At first, the excitement and curiosity can cover it up. The trailers, the performances, the production design, they all distract from the cracks. But as episodes stack up, the story always shows its true face. For HIM 2025, that face was one of missed opportunities and wasted potential. By the end, audiences weren't asking, "Who is HIM?" They were asking, "Why should I keep watching?" And once a drama loses the answer to that question, no amount of star power or marketing can save it. Asterisk characters are the soul of any drama. They're the ones who carry the weight of the story, the ones we laugh with, cry for, and root against. But in HIM 2025, the characters were its weakest link, hollow shells dressed in expensive costumes, moving through the story without true depth. The biggest disappointment was the lead character, the very figure the show was named after, him, from the start. The series tried to wrap him in layers of mystery. He was meant to be complex, someone whose motives we would slowly understand as the episodes unfolded. But what we got instead was a character who felt inconsistent and underdeveloped. One moment he was cold and calculating, the next he was overly emotional, and then suddenly he was silent for entire stretches of the show. These shifts weren't growth, they were confusion. It felt less like we were witnessing the journey of a man and more like the writers couldn't decide who he was supposed to be, even the lead actor. Praise for his talent seemed trapped by the script. His performance tried to inject life into the role. But there's only so much an actor can do when the writing gives them no direction. His eyes carried emotion, his gestures had intensity, but without a consistent character arc, those efforts were wasted. He became a passenger in a story that should have revolved around him. The supporting characters fared no better. Each was introduced with hints of importance. The loyal friend, the love interest, the rival, the mentor. But as the episodes passed, their roles crumbled into cliches. The friend existed only to deliver exposition. The love interest was reduced to repetitive crying and arguments. The rival was written with cartoonish anger, offering no real challenge or depth. Instead of being multi-dimensional people, they became props, placed in scenes to push the plot but never allowed to breathe as individuals. One of the most damaging choices was how little effort was put into character relationships. In a strong drama, connections between people are the emotional anchor. We care about betrayals because we've seen the bond. We feel heartbreak because the love felt real. But in HIM 2025, those bonds were skipped. Characters were simply declared to be close or in love or enemies without the storytelling to back it up. Moments of intimacy or conflict felt forced, as if the script was telling the audience how to feel rather than letting them feel it naturally. For example, the supposed romance that was teased in early trailers ended up being one of the weakest parts of the show. The chemistry was almost non-existent. Their conversations rarely went beyond surface-level drama, and their big emotional moments felt rushed, like boxes to be ticked rather than genuine storytelling. Viewers who tuned in hoping for a memorable love story walked away disappointed, if not outright frustrated. Another problem was the lack of meaningful backstories. Great characters don't just exist in the present, their past shapes their choices, fears, and desires. But HIM 2025 failed to explore these layers. Flashbacks were used, yes, but instead of revealing depth, they repeated the same vague traumas and mysteries without giving real answers. It left characters feeling one note. Audiences were waiting to understand why these people behaved the way they did, but the explanations never came. This lack of depth had a domino effect. When shocking events happened, betrayals, deaths, dramatic sacrifices, they didn't land. Viewers didn't gasp or cry. They shrugged. Why? Because you can't care about what happens to a character you were never allowed to know. And once the audience stops caring about the characters, the entire story loses its heart. The tragedy of HIM 2025 wasn't that the actors lacked talent. In fact, several performances hinted at brilliance. The tragedy was that the script reduced them to lifeless figures in a story that demanded they carry the world. Instead of unforgettable characters who would live in the audience's memory, they became forgettable names in the credits of a failed experiment. In the end, the drama called Him suffered because it forgot one of the simplest truths of storytelling. A story is only as strong as the people who live in it. And in this case, those people were never given the chance to feel real. A drama can survive weak marketing. Even shaky performances, if its production and direction are strong enough to guide the story. But with HIM 2025, the very backbone of its presentation, the way it looked, felt, and unfolded on screen, was riddled with flaws that made the cracks impossible to ignore. From the very first episode, the direction struggled to find its identity. The show wanted to be many things at once: a psychological thriller, a romance, a mystery, even an art-house-style character study. Instead of blending these genres into something bold and unified, the direction tossed them together like mismatched puzzle pieces. One scene would be shot like a noir thriller, dripping with shadows and tension, and the next would suddenly shift into a melodramatic love story with over-the-top music swelling in the background. These tonal swings made the drama feel unstable, like it didn't know what it wanted to be, and neither did the audience. The cinematography, which should have been a saving grace, also fell short. Yes, there were moments of beauty, wide shots of cityscapes, carefully framed close-ups, and dramatic uses of color, but they often felt disconnected from the story. Style was prioritized over substance. Scenes were beautiful to look at, but they lacked purpose. At times, the cinematography almost distracted from the plot, as if the director wanted the audience to admire the visuals instead of sinking into the emotions. Pretty pictures alone cannot hold together a collapsing narrative. Editing was another major culprit. Episodes often felt stitched together rather than smoothly crafted. Key scenes would cut off too abruptly, while others dragged far longer than necessary. The pacing issues caused by poor storytelling were made worse by these editing choices. Cliffhangers were sometimes spoiled by awkward transitions, and big reveals lost their punch because of clumsy cuts. It gave the impression of a production that was rushed in post, trying to patch holes without addressing the real structural problems. The sound design also worked against the drama. Music was overused to force emotion where the writing had failed to create it naturally. Instead of letting silence or subtle soundscapes build tension, dramatic orchestral scores blasted over almost every serious scene. What could have been chilling moments of quiet suspense were drowned in noise. Even casual conversations were weighed down by background tracks that screamed for importance the dialogue didn't deserve. Viewers often complained that the music told them how to feel rather than letting them feel it on their own. Direction also failed when it came to guiding performances. Actors, no matter how talented, rely on directors to shape their roles and maintain consistency. In HIM 2025, performances felt uneven. Some characters were exaggerated, almost theatrical, while others were muted and restrained to the point of lifelessness. The lack of balance made it difficult for the cast to share believable chemistry. It often felt like each actor was performing in a different drama altogether, without a unifying vision to tie them together. Production management issues were visible too. Continuity errors slipped through, small details that loyal fans always catch. A character's outfit changing mid-scene, props appearing and disappearing, or settings that didn't match earlier episodes. While minor on their own, these mistakes added up, feeding the sense that the show was carelessly assembled. For a drama marketed as groundbreaking, such errors were unforgivable. Budget choices also raised questions. Money was clearly spent, the sets were elaborate, the costumes were sharp, the effects polished, but it was spent in the wrong places. Expensive visuals tried to cover weak storytelling. Instead of investing in tighter scripts or additional rehearsals, the budget was poured into surface-level spectacle. The result was a drama that looked polished in still images, but collapsed the moment the story began to move. In the end, the flaws in production and direction did more than weaken the show, they exposed its weaknesses. Instead of elevating the story, the visuals, editing, and sound highlighted just how thin the foundation was. Rather than drawing the audience deeper, the direction constantly reminded them of the artificiality. Viewers weren't immersed in a world. They were watching a production, and they could see the strings being pulled. The irony is painful. HIM 2025 wanted to be a masterpiece of style and vision. But in chasing that goal without discipline, it became a case study in how production without direction is nothing more than empty spectacle.